Okay, so I'm recording this mostly as a way to do, well, I guess we'll see if I wind up posting it, but the main idea is that I want to go over the changes that I want to make when I'm copying between Skelly Cam, which is the more up-to-date, in most cases, version of the UI for a subset of the thing that FreeMoCap needs to do. And I took some screenshots of each one, and I'm going to go over the parts that want to be copied over, some of the stuff that's going to want to change that we need to add, stuff like that. So for Skelly Cam, the welcome page is mostly going to get copied over. Like most of the welcome page wants to get copied. User pings, language selection, docs and roadmap, version tag. I think the rest of this is the same. FreeMoCap side, we'll probably want to add more buttons to the front, like load recording or something else. You want to keep the FDA blurb, but I need to change the text a bit. And generally, I think the idea could be that the welcome page kind of has a scroll down aspect, and we can sort of hide other information kind of below the scroll line of welcome. So maybe some information about the data model, the sample data links, some community showcase stuff. Kind of around that philosophy of progressive disclosure, where it may take a while using it before you even notice that there's a scroll down ability on the front page, and that's kind of what we want. We don't want to overload them with information when they get there, but we want the information to be readily available. So maybe like a subtle little down arrow or something like that would be good. Looking back at this, yeah. So on the Skelly Cam side, we have these tabs in the sidebar, which is kind of dumb. I think even similar to the V1, top tabs might be the right move here. Maybe not, but I think something like that would make sense for this kind of main view window here. So we'd have home, real-time view, playback view, recordings view, which is basically what's going on down here, and then maybe a settings page. It's interesting. I didn't really check what the version 1 FreeMoCap does because I'm trying to. But I think I'm finding myself recreating a lot of the stuff that was already there. It was there for a reason. Looking at the left sidebar, we want to pretty much copy straight over the server control little collapsible from Skelly Cam, replace this WebSocket thing. I want to keep the general structure here of the sidebar. I think this looks really nice with the different tabs that could be rearranged, drag rearranged with kind of status bars on the outside, but that's mostly good. We want to restructure some of the stuff on the inside. We'll sort of cross that bridge when we get to it, but there'll be something like a real-time pipeline, something like a calibrate capture volume or calibrate cameras thing, and then another one for process motion capture or something like that. Similar to what it is now, but cleaned up. Yeah, and the camera config and stuff like that just wants to copy straight over. We also need to add a recording tab like we do over here. And I think we can probably make an icon that sort of superimposes the camera icon on top of a folder icon or something like that. We'll figure it out. In terms of the camera views, so Skelly Cams is mostly good, but I think that the FreeMoCap method of sort of figuring out the optimal grid for the camera views is arguably better than Skelly Cam's. We need to figure that out. I think that's one of these kind of perennial problems. It's a much harder thing to figure out than you would expect. So Skelly Cam, I added more manual control, so you can change the number of columns and stuff, and there's a resizable thing on the FreeMoCap side. It's resizing at this grid level, which is arguably better. We need the little text box of display versus server FPS. We want to pull that over, and we'll see. We'll figure it out. FreeMoCap obviously has the addition of the 3D viewport, so that's going to take some work. It's actually not bad as it is. The main thing is it's sloppy. It's a big single file component. I think it's called viewport 3D or something like that. And it's got a lot of complexity shoveled into it because that's how it was. That's just how it is. There is some keyboard shortcuts, press F to zoom in on the thing. And we want to add some sort of those subtle control hints at the bottom, hold shift to pan or whatever. She wouldn't mind having a full on 3D gizmo down there, but we'll figure that out. There's gonna be a lot that goes into this particular section, and it'll be basically a simplified version of what the Blender output currently is. Simplified because Blender is a very powerful program, and we're not going to recreate it in a React component. But I think we can do a lot of work there, and having the camera views, and there's a lot of things that are going to happen with the viewport of the combined view of the cameras and the 3D viewport. So like Skelly track. No, it's not a Skelly clicker where you're sort of labeling stuff. If that was coupled with a calibration information, you could, every time you click, you could project a ray into the world. And how cool would that be? Let's see, going down. Yeah, so Skelly Cam, the playback section is pretty good. I like this recording grabber. It's got like, little stats about the recording itself. I think I might want to have better control over like the base folder that it's reading from. And I think it's probably using defaults here, which is not ideal. And then there's some CSS stuff, like things not centered and all that. So that can mostly just be copied straight over. And I think you want to put that, right now, this recording list is like a waypoint. When you click on the playback thing, it shows you that, then it shows you something else. I think what we really want to do, especially on the FreeMoCap side, is kind of bake in more tightly to the concept of a recording, like recording ID. In FreeMoCap 1, it's like there's the active recording tracking stuff, which is, as I said before, probably the sloppiest part of that code base, but the concept is still there. It's like you're usually coupled to like a particular recording, either like a recording ID, which is coextensive with the name of the folder that holds all the data. And you are either going to be recording into that folder or reading out of that folder. So we want to sort of have that concept there. So like similarly, there might be like a global state of like, well, for the playback part, like a global state of like current frame, because it's like what frame of data, right? Like what time slice of data are you pulling from the recording ID that you're attached to? Yeah, and then, I guess some similar analogy for the real-time stuff, but there's like, I realize what I'm saying. There's going to be there's kind of two levels of recording, because we're going to be recording either the raw data off of the cameras or the raw data plus the real-time reconstructed data. Not particularly challenging, but still in that case, there's kind of this like connection to a particular recording ID. I guess also worth saying, like, intuitively and practically, this recording list will mostly be like attached to like a default data folder, but I think at a higher level, it's actually not going to be directly coupled to the file system. There's going to be like an internal database of like, recordings that we can sort of handle that. Yeah, and so then in the playback view itself, for Skelly Cam, there's going to be a couple changes that need to be made. The main one is that the replay, what's called playback view, Skelly Cam uses video objects to handle the video playback, which means that as far as I can tell, it's like all but impossible to interact with a standard browser video object in a way that lets you actually hard target a specific frame from the video. I think a lot of the past however many decades of browser development and like, media on the internet has had the result, like the concept, like the data model underlying a video has been very, very heavily abstracted away from like the flipbook conception of a video, when we need the flipbook conception to do what we need to do with FreeMoCap. Most of it is kind of like streams and compression-y things. It's complex. So the result is that the Skelly Cam playback view actually does not accurately represent the synchronization. And so we have this little warning that if you're like zipping around, and especially once the recording gets over like 30 to 60 seconds long, you are, what was I saying? Sorry, got an email. You can be up to like 4 to 6 frames of desynchronization, which is unacceptable. So the solution is to replace the current system, which just pulls the video files into the front end, with a playback system that basically is kind of like the offline form of the real-time, like the video connection. Like the camera connection, which is sort of pulling frame by frame and doing this whole like JPEG compression to WebSocket binary protocol, blah, blah, blah. We should just do a similar thing for the playback, so we can actually hard pull specific frame numbers. I mean, I guess the alternative would be to like I think that there's like a web codec API that is in development for the browser that might give you access to the frame count, but so there might be a solution to this problem that would allow you to do that. But I don't think the juice would be quite worth the squeeze there. And I also, like, we already have all this mechanism for doing frame by frame streaming, so we might as well keep using it, especially because once we get into FreeMoCap town, these image blobs will now be associated with like a 3D data blob. In addition to the images, there will be 3D data coming in. So this is like and so we'll want to have a more complex system to do that anyways. And then, once you're doing this, then, you're not really gaining so much from having the like whatever convenience you're getting by using these video objects is going to be eaten up by the complexity of having to sort of basically twist its arm into doing something it wasn't built to do. Also, something we've talked about a lot in the past is the playback world can now have something that's got the sort of familiar, like you define a start and end frame, and then you can sort of play back within it, and then probably something that would allow you to, fiddle with some settings and then save out to disk, based off of the clip or whatever, or process just one section, and you can process multiple sections with multiple settings, and all sorts of reasons why you want to do that from both like an experimental design perspective and also from like a recording perspective. So you could set up the cameras, record multiple trials or multiple scenes within the same long recording section, and then select the trial 1, trial 2, trial 3 sort of sections, and then process them as a batch thing that would sort of do whatever all the reasons why you might want that. How long have I been talking? 13 minutes. Other stuff to talk about for FreeMoCap is, so there is this kind of nascent settings tab, which is pretty good. It's not correct by any means, but it's like, it's getting there. The idea is, I think, good. The main thing I think I want to do with it is to kind of, couple it more directly to the left sidebar. So rather than having it be like a settings page that like opens in to the thing, it would kind of be like a behavior that happens when you pull this bar a certain, certain distance. I do want the left sidebar to optionally be a right sidebar, but we can figure that out. I would love it if all these things were kind of drag aroundable, but for now, it is what it is. But yeah, I think the settings should kind of like mostly overlap with the sidebar stuff. Maybe some things would sort of hide, but then as you can click the settings button and it pops and it sort of like pulls everything into it, or you can kind of drag this, and once it takes up more than 50% of the frame or whatever, it can, sort of slide out. And then it would become like a secondary form that would be, like this, like the same as you would see in the sidebar with like maybe more information sort of expanded by default or something like that. That might be getting a little ambitious, but we can figure it out. But yeah, also I think we should kind of reuse some of these things. They look nice. We need to figure out this is a recurrent problem. It's just the problem with the theme is like there's a default value that's a blue that's basically invisible, so we need to fix that. And then there's some other, like, again, somewhat nascent sections that haven't actually been implemented, but are kind of like halfway implemented. One is, the system info thing is good. The vibes are super off. Like this looks like a pro. Like this looks like I'm trying to sell you something, and that's not right. But the basic idea of like, checking the system and saying like, oh, you have your CPU is this, your memory is this, your GPU is that, your storage is this. Like, given this, you should, ultra, like the sort of setting, like a game type of thing, like, ultra, pro, medium, ultra full, like, the setting thing, and the kind of like recommendations, like, hey, if you have some wimpy computer, you're not going to have a good time if you're trying to do real-time processing with a bunch of cameras and stuff like that. So we can give recommended settings based off of like it, I guess long-winded way of saying we can give like recommended settings for particularly the real-time pipeline based off people's specs. And then this raw editor is also like, this whole thing can be collapsed to a single JSON or YAML or whatever, which currently doesn't work, but it wouldn't be hard to make it work. Yeah, so that's sort of top level what I'm thinking. I think for the particular run that I'm on, going to be kind of targeting basically trying to like match the functionality of V2 FreeMoCap to V1. So focusing on the calibration, record, postdoc process sort of loops, but the doing that in such a way that we're sort of laying the groundwork for the real-time control stuff, which has a lot of things in it, like the 1 euro filters and IK solvers and stuff like that. And not going to be focusing on that just yet, but it will come down the line. Calibration, technically I've created but not tested, I guess, an alternative calibration method that sort of similar computation to AnyPose, but just built with Pi series and more modern software practices and whatnot. But again, kind of like we're trying to short path to victory here. And AnyPose, for all my complaints that I might have about it, does work. I guess I got to fix that stupid list comprehension thing that I hit on the stream yesterday, but you know, gotta fix a lot of things. Yeah, and then we got this here, and yeah, for some comparison, I guess I don't really have anything, but this is the API Swagger docs or whatever for FreeMoCap. And there's a bunch of new stuff for, you know, processing and calibration mocap. These are all the Skelly Cam endpoints. So this is, you know, camera detect, microphone, camera groups, record. Do we have record start stop? Oh no, I think I pulled record up to, is it pipeline? Oh, we don't have recording, right? That was one of the things that I didn't pull over. So yeah, but these are the API endpoints, and these are the schemas. These are the models that, you know, that they expect to receive. That are all defined as pedantic models in the code base. It's a whole thing. But yeah, so I think we're in a good spot to work. I will be hard targeting the post hoc, viable post hoc pipeline, and yeah, we'll see how we go. Even as I'm discussing these kind of like the surface level UI, like the design, I guess we call this like the UX maybe level. There's a lot of other stuff that needs to be changed under the hood in terms of like the machinery of, you know, how the front end connects to the back end, and how the data streams through the WebSocket, and how all those pieces are managed, and like, yeah, the RTK, the App Store stuff, like application store, not like iPhone App Store, like the data of the front end, and you know how that gets shoved into requests. All of that kind of overhauled in Skelly Cam, so I should be able to kind of port it back through with relative ease, and then, you know, with, you know, the whatever I came up with for Skelly Cam kind of serves as the model for updating the more complex controls around like the pipelines and mocap and calibration stuff. But again, we were already halfway there, and this view in particular of like all the settings being visible as like a single gigantic JSON YAML file was kind of like part of the design. So we should already set up for it. But yeah, we'll see. Okay, let's see. Where are we at? 20 minutes. Perfect. Okay, have a good day. Bye.